All of these stories today were submitted directly to me by listeners like yourself. If you have a story you'd like to share with me, just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to submit your story. And of course, thank you. I've been wanting to share this story for a while, but I wasn't really sure of where to go. But after listening to some of the stories on your channel, I think you could tell this story well enough. It's a bit different from the normal stories that you do, but I think your listeners will enjoy it. I have a story from way back whenever I was a teenager. I won't mention where I lived at the time, mostly because I don't want people to look too far into it and potentially bother the people that still live in the area. And there's a reason for that. Back when I was around 18 or so, which would have been in the mid-80s, I was dating a girl that was Native American, and she lived with her family on native land. Just to add, though it's not super relevant, we are actually married now, and we no longer live on the land, but do live in a city nearby. Now, some people in her family had a major issue with us dating. I'm not native at all. In fact, I'm mostly Hispanic, but her parents accepted me as if I was their son-in-law from day one. They were, and are, super loving people, and they saw that their daughter and I loved one another, and that's what mattered. Now, back when I was this age, I would often spend a day or the whole weekend with her and her parents. We would just hang out and do whatever they had planned, so long as it didn't require time with the people of her tribe. And like I said, her parents accepted me, but I was looked at a bit differently. And I totally get that. For the most part, as long as I didn't insert myself into their dealings, they didn't really have much to say to me. During the last summer, before she and I tied the knot, I was staying with her family pretty much full time, as, by this point, they already knew we were planning on getting married. I remember that, while sleeping in her room, I kept hearing something scratching at the wall by the window. It was almost like a cat or a raccoon was trying to climb its way up to the glass. I remember that it was rather subtle, and I would mention it to her dad, that they had a raccoon that liked to come around at night. He told me that he hadn't heard anything or even noticed any signs of a raccoon, but that he would set up a catch trap to see if he could maybe get him away from the house. I agreed and moved on, thinking that that would be the end of it. The same night that he set up the trap, I heard what sounded like the cage for the release trap being smashed or hit by something large, and I wasn't really willing to go outside, mostly because I was thinking it was something trying to get at the small animal that he had caught, maybe. I just remember thinking, well, that can't be good for anything that was in the trap, and then going back to sleep. The next morning, we went out and checked the trap, and no joke, it was completely destroyed. And when I say destroyed, it almost looked like someone had run over it with a car. I asked her dad what could have caused that, and he basically told me not to be concerned about it and to just forget it. At first I was a bit taken back, but I had to remember that this man held very deep beliefs that I didn't personally understand. And maybe this was a situation of not speaking about the thing or mentioning it by name. I nodded in understanding and just told him that hopefully it would just go away. And it did for a while. There was a bit of a stretch where there wasn't any scratching at the window or really any noise outside the house for a bit. But about a month after the event with the trap, I woke up in the middle of the night to hear someone speaking. I could hear a voice, but I couldn't really make out what was being said. Like they were speaking with their backs turned to the window in a really quiet tone. I sat up thinking maybe it was her father and looked out the window to see if I could see him, but all I could see was what looked like someone standing at a nearby tree and staring in my direction. In my half-asleep stupor, I stared for a few moments and thought maybe it was him or one of her siblings or something, but then it got weird. While I was staring, I started hearing whatever or whoever this was say my name. Now, that wouldn't normally be a huge deal. Everyone in the area knew who I was, so maybe it could be someone trying to get my attention outside. The problem was that the person's voice, the voice that was calling my name from outside, was my fiancé's. The woman that was clearly out cold, lying right next to me. I could hear it clear as day saying my name, almost in an inquisitive tone. It kind of like it was being playful and calling to me. I shook my fiancé awake without making too much movement, and I asked her if she heard what I was hearing. She paused for a moment and said, "It's probably just an owl or something. Go back to sleep." I just kind of put my head back down and stared up at the ceiling the entire night, while this thing kept randomly calling for me. I tried to ignore it, but part of me seriously felt like if I went to sleep, it was going to show up at the window. It eventually stopped when the morning came, and when I looked back outside, that figure out by the tree was gone. It was seriously creepy as hell to me. I have no idea what it was, and I didn't ask her nor her dad, mostly because I didn't want to invite it further into my life by knowing more about it. That was the last night that I heard anything outside the window, and the only time that I ever heard it talking. We did move away a few years after, but I never mentioned this to her parents. I did tell her, and she laughed at me, saying that I had been watching way too many scary movies. About 12 years ago, before I moved to the Midwest to transfer to a different school, I worked as an intern for a local radio station in my area. At the time, I was a 21-year-old college student and was hoping to land a career in voice acting or some type of broadcasting. I was able to land a job doing a 3-year internship for a radio station and was hoping this would help me get my foot in the door. For the first few months, my job mainly consisted of answering phone calls and providing info on each caller to the DJs and hosts. Soon after, the hosts actually allowed me to do some talking on the afternoon shows with them. So I got to know some of the fans of the show. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed the interaction and being involved with the events and activities the radio station would participate in. I quickly began to become familiar and acquainted with the fans who would regularly call in and attend the various events that our station would host. There was one fan in particular, who we're going to call Stacy for anonymity of this story, that would call in frequently. She would either request songs and participate in contests, or to ask general questions. She would also attend a lot of events that I would be at with the station, so she and I had gotten to know each other. There was one time where she had won one of our contests, and so I had to obtain her personal email to send her more information for her prize. Shortly after that, she began emailing me through the email address that I used at the radio station. Usually it was just a standard, "Hey, insert radio station name here. I just wanted to send a hello message to my favorite radio intern, Blake. I hope you're having a good day," etc. For the first few messages, I would be cordial and respond, and then I eventually was allowed to create my own Facebook account with the radio alias name so fans could interact with me. Stacy, of course, had found my account and had sent me a friend request, and I added her back. She would like and comment on nearly every single one of my posts, and at first, I didn't mind, because I just chalked it up to her being a loyal fan to the radio show and the DJs. In early July, our radio station hosted a small event in one of the local parks as a sort of a 4th of July bash. There would be food, games, prizes, and a few small bands would be performing. Stacy attended, and as soon as she saw me standing with a few of the other radio hosts, she made a beeline for us. She and I chatted for a few minutes, but I was also extremely busy working and also saying hello to the other fans who had showed up. I noticed that throughout the entire event, Stacy didn't really seem interested in the bands that were playing or the games. She mostly hung out near where I was set up and would just watch me. And I noticed that she hadn't shown up with anybody else. One of the main hosts of our morning show also noticed this and pointed that out to me, and even teased me about her probably having a crush on me. I brushed it off, but it did seem a bit odd that Stacy only seemed to be interested in talking to me the entire time. As the event wrapped up towards the end of the night, Stacy was still pretty much glued to my side. I tried to be as polite as possible, but I had definitely become more aware of her clinginess, as well as notice her attitude had seemed to change whenever another female fan or colleague would talk to me. As we packed up all of our equipment and items after the night was over, I told Stacy thanks for coming and that I hoped that she had a good time. As I started heading towards my car, she started walking behind me, as if she was wanting to continue chatting. I was exhausted from the day's event, and I wanted to get the equipment back to the station so I could just go home. I said goodbye to her one more time, and she stepped forward and reached out her arms, gesturing for a hug. I felt a little odd about this, so for a few awkward seconds, I just stood there and finally just wanting to get rid of her, I stepped in and gave her a quick pat on the back and told her to have a good night. She held on and embraced me in this long, uncomfortable hug. And once I pulled away, she then asked if it would be too much trouble if I could drive her home. I stood there dumbfounded. She had hung around talking to me all night and now had waited until the night was over to ask for a ride home. I sort of stammered and asked her how she managed to get a ride here to attend the event earlier. And she says, "Oh, I drove myself, but I'm just feeling a little tired, and I don't think it'd be safe for me to drive when I'm this tired." I told her that while I normally wouldn't mind giving her a ride, I was exhausted, and my car was already packed with all the stuff and set up equipment from the day's event, and really, I just wanted to get it all back to the station so I could go home. She looked a bit disappointed, but finally said she understood and started to turn and head towards the other cars in the parking lot. I thought that was that, and 30 minutes later, I was finally home and ready to get some sleep when my phone went off. I checked it, and I saw it was a Facebook chat message from Stacy. She wrote, "I had a really fun time with you tonight. Thanks for making it such a memorable night. XOXO. I didn't know how or what to respond to that, and I was too tired to think of a response, so I left it on read and went to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I saw that I had more messages from Stacy, as well as a Facebook notification that she had updated her relationship status to in a relationship with me, which needed me to accept the status change. I read through the messages that she had sent me. They ranged from "had such a great time with you last night," heart emojis, to "can't sleep, been up all night thinking about you," to "can't wait to see you today." This was too much for me. I messaged her back telling her that while I enjoyed being friendly acquaintances with her as a fan of the radio show, there was and will be absolutely no romantic relationship between us. I apologized if my actions had somehow misled her to think there was something more going on between us, but I had to kindly reject her advances. I saw that she had opened the messages, but did not immediately respond. I thought that was that, and went about my day. Later that evening, I went to my parents' house for dinner and had to spend some time with my family. My younger sister, Kara, who still lived at home, was also there, and while we were all sitting around chatting, she checked her phone. She asked me if I knew a person named Stacy and had mentioned that she had sent her a friend request. I immediately felt sick to my stomach and let out an annoyed sigh. Kara then told me that Stacy had sent her a direct message on Facebook and had told her she was dating her brother and thought that it would be nice to add her as well so she could get to know my family. This both creeped me out and pissed me off. I thought I had made it very clear to Stacy in my last message that there was nothing going on between us. And then also to add to the creepo fact, I had never talked to her about my family members. I told my sister about Stacy and what she'd been up to, and she advised me to block her and cut off all communications right away. She blocked her as well, so she couldn't send her any more messages. I pulled out my phone and sent another long message to Stacy, once again telling her to please stop trying to reach out to my family members, and repeated that there is still no relationship between us. I told her it was fine if she was still a fan of the radio show, but she needed to stop telling people that we were in a relationship. From there, I didn't even bother to give her a chance to respond to my message, and I blocked her account. I had hoped that this was the end of it, and by the time I had gotten to the station on Monday morning, it was out of my mind. Up until the lead host of the radio show pulled me aside. He told me that a fan named Stacy had applied for another intern position we had open for the radio station, and that she had referenced me as a referral. She also added that she and I were dating, and that I had told her to apply for the intern spot. I was shocked. I quickly updated the host that I was in fact not dating this person, and had never told her about the new intern position, nor to apply for it. I told him that she was basically stalking me ever since the summer event the station hosted last weekend, and that I had actually blocked her and kindly told her to leave me alone. The host informed me that they would not be proceeding with hiring Stacy, and advised me to be extra cautious with die-hard fans, as there are situations like this that can happen. Throughout the day, I was a nervous wreck, and was barely able to focus on my work. I kept worrying every time the phone would ring at the station, and that it would be Stacy calling. For the next couple of days, nothing else happened, and I was starting to get optimistic again that the issue was resolved. However, on Friday night, as I was walking out to my car, I saw that the driver's side door had a huge scratch on it. Someone had taken a screwdriver and intentionally carved a long, deep scratch into the paint. I was shocked and livid at the same time. And like a clueless idiot, I stood there for a few minutes looking around the parking lot. I called the station manager and informed them of what was happening and what had just been done to my car. Unfortunately, there were no security cameras in the parking lot, so there was most likely no way to show who exactly did this. I drove home, making sure to be extra cautious of my surroundings, and was constantly checking my rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed. I texted my sister and told her what had happened. She told me not to unblock Stacy and reach out to her, no matter how angry I was, as this would only be playing into her game further. She told me to document everything else that happened and to be careful. Later that night, I got a new notification on my Instagram and saw that I had a new follower. Yep, you guessed it. It was Stacy. She'd sent me a message on Instagram which said, "I think we need to get together and talk." Despite my sister's warnings not to respond to anything, I messaged her back asking what she thinks we would need to talk about, adding, "Is that why you left a huge scratch on my car today?" She responded with, "We need to stop this stupid fight we're having. I want us to work things out." I was speechless. This girl was completely delusional and still under the impression that we were in a relationship. I noticed that she was being clever by not admitting over text that she was the one who had keyed my car, even though I was 100% positive it was her. I still ended up screenshotting the messages from her and proceeded to block her on Instagram. I was pretty much on edge after this, worrying about her calling in at the station, or if she would end up randomly showing up at work or try to do anything else to my car. Stacy did end up calling the station a few times, each time requesting to talk to me. By now, the rest of the staff at the station had known about her and had denied her from talking to me each time she'd called. She had tried to get through by telling them that she was my girlfriend, and that it was either an urgent issue or imperative that she speaks to me. Every time the person answering the phone would deny her from talking to me and would end the call after. Over the next month, this was a normal occurrence. I was very fortunate that my boss and the staff at the radio station were so understanding and supportive, but in all honesty, I was miserable. It is a terrible feeling as if you constantly have to be looking over your shoulder every time you go out, or getting a sick feeling in your stomach every time you're told that your stalker had just phoned you at work. The radio station manager had actually contacted the police and asked what could be done about the situation. Unfortunately, there wasn't much that could be done about this unless Stacy were to actually do something in person. And although she had most likely been the one to key my car, there was no proof or evidence that she had done it. Lucky for me, the story pretty much does end there. About 2 months later, I ended up transferring and moving to a different college in the fall, and I didn't end up hearing from or seeing Stacy anymore. I know the story doesn't have a super terrifying or frightening ending, but for those few short months during that summer, it was extremely stressful, and was definitely affecting my mental health for a while. I'm just glad that Stacy didn't end up trying to contact me, but I sincerely hope that by now, after almost 13 years later, she didn't end up doing this to someone else, or that she got the help that she needed. This happened back in the first week of the year 2000. At the time, my husband was a supervisor for a large railroad company. The phone was constantly ringing, even after work hours, because there was always trouble on that railroad, and my husband is the type that can't say no. He would always answer the calls and troubleshoot the problems with the maintainers on the phone. A lot of the time, he would even go out into the field to help them in person. So, in short, 9 times out of 10, if the phone rang, it was one of my husband's workers. One day, It was after work hours, and my husband, myself, and our 2 daughters were watching TV in the living room. I'd just gotten up to use the bathroom, and the phone rang. Now, remember, this is the year 2000. Cell phones were not that mainstream yet. My husband did have a work cell, but he usually left it in the truck, knowing the workers would just call the landline if he didn't answer the cell. When the phone rang, since I was already walking by it, I said I would get it. I picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" There was a thick static, very loud. "Hello?" I repeated. I heard a very, very faint voice at the other end of the line. It was a male voice, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. I said, I can't hear you." I told my husband that I think one of his men must be in a bad coverage zone, trying to call him. He told me to just hang up and let them call back, but I felt like I shouldn't. The voice, it sounded somewhat scared. So I tried again. I said, "Can you speak louder? I can't hear you." Then, the voice was way more clear. The man yelled, "Lisa!" Now, needless to say, I'm freaking the hell out at this point. My husband's coworkers did not know me like that. They called me Ms. Rosenblatt. On top of that, the voice rang a familiar bell. I thought to myself, I think I know this voice. As I'm thinking this, the voice again screams my name, "Lisa!" And that's when I recognized it. It was my father. He was my estranged father because he had been an abusive alcoholic. He beat my mother and abused my sister and I. The thing is, he had died of cancer 2 weeks prior. I freaked. I slammed the phone down, immediately hanging up. I could feel the color draining from my face. My husband jumped up and ran over to me, asking what was wrong. My throat was dry and my heart was racing, but I said, It was my father." My husband said, "Are you sure it wasn't someone that just sounded like him? He's dead, remember?" I said, "Of course I remember, but I know his voice. I heard it my entire childhood." In the days following, my husband asked all of his men if they had called our home phone on that day at that time, and none of them had. I couldn't get the sound of the way his voice was desperate and panicked out of my head. I thought about it constantly for days. I swear, and I know this sounds nuts, but I think my father was calling me from hell. I am a Christian, and I believe in forgiveness, so a couple of days after the phone call, I dropped to my knees in prayer. I asked God to spare my father and that I forgave him for everything he did to me and our family. Of course, I can't know the outcome of my prayer, but it gave me peace, and I do sincerely hope my father is in a better place. Okay. I had a very interesting morning one day back in 2021. I was sleeping away, and while I was sleeping, I heard my closed bedroom door open. Mind you, I always keep my bedroom door closed, 24/7, 365. Then, I heard footsteps. Next, I feel this very soft touch on my back, which causes me to wake up looking at my closet door, only to find nothing. What the entire hell was that? Who was there? Oh, and to add more questionable intrigue to this entry, I also hear footsteps going up and down my basement stairs. And when I stand at the foot of my bed, near my open bedroom door during the day and night as well. There is one other catch. The basement door has to be open, too. Just, wow. So I think I got a ghostly visitor who doesn't want to leave his house. I moved into this place in 2016 with my 9-year-old son, and I lived there until 2019. This was early 2018. There was an apartment about 2 down from mine and across. For almost 2 years, it was always being painted. Or at least it always smelled like paint and chemicals. They were coming from the door, seeping into the hallway. Sometimes they had painters coming in and out of the building, and I assumed they went there, but they never seemed to be going in and out of that specific apartment. One day, at the front foyer, I noticed a condemned sticker ripped half off of that apartment. I contemplated bugs, or drug house, or even a murder could have happened. I mean, who paints an apartment for almost 2 years? Eventually, a family of 4 or 5 moved in. I'm not exactly sure how many, as I didn't talk to them much, other than a hi in the hallways while getting the mail. There was definitely 2 children, a mother and a father, that lived there. We live in the ghetto of my city, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, so it's not unusual for police or firemen, or even an ambulance, to be heard or seen. I hear pounding on a door and a man frantically asking his children, or someone. He wasn't speaking English, as many immigrants do live in my building. It was maybe 10 at night or so. I looked out my door into the hallway to the left toward the noise, and it was the father of the family that had moved into the painted apartment. He had a laundry basket next to him. He looked as if he had grabbed laundry from the laundry room on the next floor. He was pounding on the door with wide eyes, as if he was locked out, and I asked him, "Is everything okay?" He said, "No, my babies are inside. I can't get in, but I didn't lock the door." Now, this is what I understood with his thick accent. I saw his children previously, and they were like 2 and 4, so there's no way that they could reach the deadbolt. He claimed his wife worked nights, and he was on the phone with the police by this time. I told him that maybe the kids somehow got to a stool or something and locked the door, thinking it was funny. But the kids were screaming inside. Well, one was. I could only hear one child when I knew that there were 2. I went back to my apartment hastily as my son was there alone, sleeping over the noise. My door was still unlocked, and all calm. The police got there and had to bust their door in after like half an hour of pounding. They moved less than 6 months after that, and I'm pretty sure it's still vacant since the last people only lasted a month. But every once in a while, I get a paint smell or ammonia when I walk by. I unfortunately was with a drug addict of a boyfriend at the time, which I've never done hard drugs in my life. I smoke here and there, but nothing else. We were fighting one day, arguing about how he had no money when he had gotten paid 2 days prior, $1,400 working as a mechanic. This small green plate that I keep on top of the fridge with weed on it and papers, so it's out of reach of my son, flew to the floor and smashed into pieces. We stopped, looked at each other. I said, "I told you this place is haunted," as months before the bathroom door closed on its own, and he swears up and down it was me since he was in the bathroom with his back turned and the door slammed shut. I'm no longer with the toxic people, and the apartment can't keep tenants or the tenants won't stay. But either way, it was creepy. So, this is my first time writing a story for the public, but it's the only real cool story I can think of that has an unknown mysterious origin. And this is the time that I officially saw my first in-person encounter with a UFO craft, which was very fascinating. It happened around sometime towards the end of the year. I was about 15 or 16 at the time. I'm 34 now, so that would have been around the year 2003. And this takes place in the city where I'd spent most of my life, in San Francisco, California. I was quite the adventurous kid who didn't exactly listen to their parents, and of course, my friends who I hung out with as well. I forgot where me and my best friend were going at that time. It was like 1, maybe 2 in the morning, as we were waiting at the bus stop for the Owl bus, a few blocks from my house, close to San Francisco General. The bus only came every hour or so we're just sitting and waiting for it for a little while. And that's when I gazed up and noticed across the street and to the left, a little above the first-story pizza restaurant, above the roof, it was this UFO-like craft. A disc shape for sure that was just hovering silent. No sound whatsoever. It was about the size of that one UFO craft from the movie Independence Day. I barely got to notice the details of this thing that long, but like I said, it was disc-shaped, dark, metallic in color, and a bottom that had a circular, rectangle light pattern in which it would rotate, and the 4 different colors in these rectangles were blue, red, yellow, and green. Like 4 going clockwise, and 4 going counterclockwise. Then, before I knew it, the bottom got a little bit faster, and then a lot faster, and incredibly fast. All in like 3 seconds. And then it jetted straight diagonally upwards, and before my eyes, it had pretty much become a laser beam that just went out of this world in what seemed like light speed. And it was gone. There was no sound. I said, "Wow," to my friend, did you see that? And he confirmed that he had, yes. I remember myself saying, "You know, I always knew aliens existed, but this is just confirmation of what I already knew." That was undeniable truth that beings from another place in this cosmos do come here. No doubt about it. I never really seen anything I can think of that would be like light speed, but I can imagine as fast as I can see this UFO turn to a laser beam and go up in the sky, it was like a blink, and then it was gone. And this whole time, nothing made any sound whatsoever. There's a certain feeling when you see something and another person is there with you, and they saw the same thing. Now, when I say it turned into a laser, a good, almost perfect example of what I'm talking about is like from the old show Star Trek: The Next Generation. Like that jump to hyperspace. It was truly an amazing experience, and I just wish I could see something like that again. Well, there was my story. I hope y'all enjoyed, and if you've experienced any craft as well, let me know. Just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who submitted their story to me for this video. It's because of you guys that this video actually exists. I had a different idea for this video. It was going to be a different topic altogether, but whenever I started combing over my submissions, I noticed I had a good number of stories that would work well together. And thus, here we are. Hopefully, you all enjoyed it. And maybe it'll inspire you to write your scary story for me if you have one. If you do, astheravendreams.com is the place to go. There's a button you click that says submit your story, or something like that, and it takes you to a page where you can just send your story straight to me. And if you have one and you want to send it my way, great. If not, that's totally fine. As long as you can enjoy the content that I put out, and all that. And once again, just a really quick, final thank you to everyone again who submits their stories to me or lets me use their stories on Reddit, and to everyone who listens to my videos. I appreciate every single one of you, and it's with you guys that I'm able to grow this channel. And without you, I wouldn't be able to grow, is where my mind started going in that previous sentence, obviously. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting subscribe. If you're not new, don't do that. Don't unsubscribe. I need you here. Stay, please. And, of course, I hope you all have a beautiful day. I hope you're having a great week so far. I hope the rest of your week is stellar. And I hope to see you again on Friday. Or on the next video, which will be Friday. Anyways. But of course, until then, beautiful people, sleep well.